My co-founder and I formed this B2C e-commerce company with a recurring revenue model a couple of years ago. While we have invested a lot in our technology and software platform, we don't view this as a technology play. We view it as a land grab marketing play, and we're scaling faster than anyone expected. We've had inquiries from several strategics, and we expect the best exit to be with a strategic buyer. We've raised enough capital to sustain us for 18 to 24 months. Either we raise more capital or we sell. We're certainly not ready to sell today, but our best guess is that we'll be approached within 18 months with an offer we can't turn down. Very exciting. So I have a few questions. What are some of the things that I should be thinking about if I receive a preemptive offer? Mike, you want to go first?
Yeah, Steve, and one of the first things is, a preemptive offer comes in, basically don't sign it. It's going to be a letter of intent. It's going to be a term sheet. There's going to be specifics in there that might hurt you down the road a little bit. So that's something that you go right to legal counsel with. I mean, the investment banker, the financial guys, but definitely rely on your legal counsel to basically get that worded properly.
And yeah. Peter, what's your view of a preemptive offer?
Yeah, I mean, I think the same thing. I think a lot of times people focus on the top line, which is the dollars, which is great, and they don't want the person to escape, but that they don't focus on the fact that there's a lot of things when especially with a strategic buyer to come in, these people have done it a lot of times. It's like me going to buy a car. I buy a car once every, in my case, 10 to 15 years. They do 25 deals a year. They sell 25 cars a day. They know how to do it. They're going to skin me. If I had a car advisor to help me when I bought a car, I'd be much better off. There's things that you don't know about, limitation of liabilities, the possibility of M&A insurance, all kinds of things. And even if you end up signing the initial term sheet, it's worth talking to your advisors to say, how good is this and how different is this than what you would expect on market? So I definitely think you need to talk before even frankly 2 or 3 hours worth of education is worth it before you go off and just sign the term sheet. You shouldn't be shy about that.
Dan, before I ask you a question, I want to sort of loop back to something. If I receive a preemptive offer, thinking about it, the conversation from a couple of minutes ago, a preemptive offer really takes me out of the opportunity or away from the opportunity to have competitive offers. Right, Mike?
It does, but I will tell you, when you get a preemptive offer, usually you jump on the horse basically and you start putting your marketing materials together. You don't want to deal with just one buyer.
So, Peter, the first words out of an acquirer's mouth is going to be due diligence. Yeah. What about a non-disclosure agreement?
Right. So especially given that you're thinking of a strategic buyer, which means a company in your industry who wants to get you for the business and the technology. I mean, you've talked about yourself being a land grab marketing play, but the fact is, if it's strategic brings you in, they're going to be interested in not only your customers, but your technology, and part of what your customers are, the names of your customers, how they are, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of very important information that you really need to keep secret. So you definitely need to have a non-disclosure agreement in place first. There's a lot of things that people can learn about your company, even at a very surface level of due diligence, that you want to think about before you start talking about it. I mean, telling people sort of the very, very top line, the sort of the type of information to get a investor interested. Oh, we have strategic growth of this % per year and so on and so forth. That's vague, is fine, but really once you get down into anything more specific than that, you really need some protection, and you need to, and even, I mean, to be a little cynical, you need to trust the people on the other side to a certain extent also, because even a non-disclosure agreement is not going to stop people from mining your information for insights, even if they're not directly applicable to you, and they can harm you. And there's stories I could tell of people who've done that sorts of stuff.
So Dan, when I get this preemptive offer, what should my thoughts be related to the financial side of my business?
Right. So I would say the first thing is you don't get excited. You should take inventory of your stakeholders, your board of directors. Who are they? Are they competitors? Have they invested in your business, and are they now competitors, like direct market competitors with this new potential strategic acquirer? How open do you need to be with your board of directors? How open do you need to be? On a finance stuff, I would say, Steve, it goes back to own the numbers, know your books, own the numbers, get those critical KPIs, because it's not for the purpose of negotiating, but like Mike said, if you get that offer and it feels real, it's probably a horse race. It's the beginning, it's the beginning of the end, right? It's starting to put those numbers together, the marketing materials, creating a competitive environment, because I guarantee you, if there's one strategic buyer, there's probably another 3 right behind it. And not to mention who may actually be on your board could also be a potential acquirer of your business. So Peter, that's actually an interesting comment or question, is like, what about the board of directors? Like, from a legal perspective, I don't want to get too dangerous here, but should Steve be talking to his board of directors when he gets this preemptive offer?
Well, I certainly think it would be a mistake to not tell your board about the preemptive offer. Now, it's fine to go and talk to your advisors first and say, is this real, and so on and so forth, because when you talk to your board of advisors, and it depends on sort of like your relationship with the board anyhow, you want to have a really fulsome answer for what this is. You want to say to them, look, here's an offer that, I mean, even the one that you turned down, you said, we got an offer, but it was from a flaky company, and we talked about it, and the terms are so absurd that I'm not going to pursue it, but I'm not hiding, essentially, I'm not hiding it from you. I got to tell you about it. Alternatively, if you have a offer that comes in that looks good, you want to have some explanation for the board as to why you want to spend some time on it. Maybe they'll have some ideas. So there should be, at least at some level, depending on the seriousness of the offer, some discussion with the board. You don't need actual board approval to do, either to turn things down or to approve things, at a very preliminary stage, but to not involve them at all, I think, is a real big mistake, because they'll view that as, some either hiding it or just being impolite to them.
So I just want to take another minute on this. Sorry, Mike. One of our board members, we have had several strategic relationships in the couple of years that we've been around. One of our board members is a board member of a strategic partner of ours. And so it makes it a little more complicated about telling the board. What do you think?
So I guess I'd fast backwards to 2 years ago when you got that strategic investor in there, and I'm happy that you signed up the specific agreement that said, in the event of a conflict of interest where one strategic who's in a competitor of theirs comes in, they don't participate and they don't have to be told about it. Because really, to have them involved and to have them talk puts the individual in a very bad position. So I mean, you could say to them, so that agreement should have said something like, if we get one of these things in and we're not going to pursue it, we don't even, maybe we'll tell you, maybe we don't. But if we're going to pursue it, maybe we tell you that we're going to pursue something, and we maybe give you the opportunity to also bid, in which case you, the board member, don't participate, and so on and so forth. And there's agreements that you can put in place for that. In the absence of agreement, I think that you have to be very careful about, on the one hand, not telling them too much, and on the other hand, again, not concealing. So I think I would go back to them and say it's something, we've gotten an indication of interest from a competitor of yours. I mean, we have to go and investigate it. I'm assuming, because there's a conflict there, that you understand that we can't involve you directly in the early discussions, but of course we'll go back and we'll be telling you as the shareholder and the board member of the shareholder about this, and we'll involve you at some point, but not right yet.
So I promise I will come to you, Peter, for more specific advice when we get to that point. But another question, Peter, very quickly. I won't sign the LOI because you've advised me not to, but our software and trademark is one of our most valuable assets. What do we need to do immediately to secure IP ownership?
So first thing, of course, you've had all of the people who have developed software for you, either internally as employees or through external contractor relationships with a company, sign an assignment of invention agreements. And you have to get those copies, the signed copies of those. And if anybody hasn't signed them, you got to go and try and find those people, because that's a key thing. That's a key gap that you'll need to follow to fill. In terms of trademarks, if you haven't filed for a trademark application, if you're just using a sort of a, as it were, a common law trademark, which means that you're using logo or trademark that hasn't been registered with the federal government, that's something that you should go ahead and sign, ASAP. It takes sometimes up to about a year or so in some cases to get those things approved. And as a B2C company, in fact, in some cases, the trademark is more valuable, or at least as valuable as the software itself. The other thing is, assuming that you're like other software companies, you want to make sure that not only the software that's internally developed is yours, but you want to make sure that your development team understands open source software, and you might consider doing a survey or an investigation of whether they've used open source software correctly. And similarly, a lot of people are going to be, although it's not an IP issue, want a security audit. I wouldn't necessarily think that you need to do much about patent searches or anything, as software patents are relatively unusual. But if you're in a particular industry that there seems to be a lot of patent activity, we should talk about that too.
So very quickly, Peter, the last question in this, I have not, as you know, we have not accepted the preemptive offer. We think it's coming, but we certainly don't have one. What do we need to do today as it relates to NDAs and confidentiality agreements, particularly with employees?
So as I say, I mean, certainly all the NDAs, all the employees should have signed something which is an assignment of inventions and confidentiality agreement.
But we haven't done that yet. So
you should go back and there's a process there to make sure that they need to sign it. Okay, and you may have to pay them some money or give them some consideration to make these things binding. And that's something that you just have to work through with the lawyers. But basically you have to track people down and have people sign these things. That's a very important thing to do, and collect them and have signed copies available.
Dan, one more quick question for you, and then we're going to go to the next step. We here at the company have sales in more than 30 states. We're not yet at every state, but we're at more than 30. Do I need to worry about sales taxes? State sales taxes?
Yeah, I mean, the simple answer is yes, and it's becoming more of an issue over the last 3 years. Every state has its own rules, so determining nexus and how much and when to pay. But the simple answer is yes, you do have to worry about, and you should probably be at a point where you need a sales tax analysis done. Now, let's go back, take a step back. The core data that feeds into your sales tax is, of course, your accounting. So making sure that your systems, whether you're using Shopify or Stripe or your internal software, connects nicely with your inventory system, your payment system, your general ledger, making sure that's all syncing, because at the end of the day, in order to figure out how much you do owe Massachusetts or California or New York, it's really going to come from, you want it to come from your general ledger. So before or after you've received that preemptive offer, now is probably the time, because whether or not you're going to take that offer, you're probably looking at an 18-month sort of runway to begin to prepare for that eventual sale.